there, Griff Hamlin here from Blues Guitar Unleashed. Welcome. Thanks for joining me today. In this video, I want to talk to specifically those of you that are sort of in the advanced, beginner, intermediate stages about some things that you can do. There's some things that you do as a beginner. They're natural, they make sense, they're often effective when you're a beginner. But as you get a little bit more advanced, as you start to learn some new techniques and some new ideas, there are some particular things, several of them, that really don't serve you anymore, and they're ideas and they're techniques that you really want to start to shed and you really want to start to get rid of. And so I call this the beginner's mindset, and I want to help you to shed that beginner's mindset and start to think a little bit more as a well-rounded guitar player, as a more well-rounded musician, and approach the things that you play a little bit differently from a mental standpoint and also from a technique standpoint. So the very first concept and the first idea here is muting. As a beginner, when you are learning things like chords, right? We have, C chords and G chords and D chords, and you play all of these things like this, you tend to approach the guitar from a very hands-off way. In other words, you don't want to touch anything. For one thing, we don't have any overdrive or anything yet, right? So you don't want to touch anything except what you're trying to play. So for example, to play an A minor chord, right? We put our fingers, we're right on the tips of our fingers, all of the notes ring out. We color that a win, right? And we're happy. And we strum it. Well, here's kind of a funny thing that happens. If I add that overdrive in that we tend to like to play when we play the blues or rock or anything, right? Notice that as I strike one string, another string is going to vibrate. So if I strike this A minor chord, and when I let go, you can hear that that's still ringing. There's a little bit of overring right there, and it may be hard, it may not quite come through the video, but any time that you strike one string, the whole instrument vibrates, right? So anytime you strike, say, 4 or 5 strings, you play a chord, and there's one left over that you are not actively muting, you're gonna have some random ringing, and that creates this sort of random noise that just goes on. So I strike that, notice that I kill them all. And that one is still kind of ringing. You can kind of hear that hum. Well, we don't want that. So when I strike my A minor, for one thing, my right hand, as soon as I'm done, my right hand goes into place. And you'll notice that no matter what I play, as soon as I'm done, my right hand, or if you're a left-handed guitar player, your left hand, it's your picking hand, goes into its place, which is on top of all of the strings. I am always 100% of the time muting my guitar unless I am playing something. And you can see that when I play, I'm only playing 3 notes here. But my first finger, since it's not being used, is dragging along behind. Now, it just happens to be sitting on a harmonic. Okay, but it's clunking those out. So it's always dragging around. If I'm doing when I play just these 2 notes up here, that one goes clunk. Why? Because the tip of my first finger is hitting it. And notice my thumb over the top. I'm doing my absolute best at all times, and on my picking hand, the heel of my hand is on these open strings. Notice that everything mutes out except the ones I want. And what I would rather see from a student that walks in my door, what I would usually rather see is they accidentally mute a note they intended to get out rather than have extra sounds, because that shows me that they're cognizant of these extra sounds, and they're coming from a place of muting all the time and releasing the notes when it's time, rather than a hands-off approach where you don't touch anything, and then you end up with all these different overrings. You have no control over that. You have to keep control of your instrument, especially with some overdrive, right? Now you got some buzz. Great. All right, fluorescent lights, single coil pickups, we got some buzz. So you notice whenever I'm not playing, I'm rolling that volume knob off. Again, to keep control, keep the muting, keep it all under control. If I just let it sit here and I accidentally bump it, right, or my hand accidentally hits it, I got all this stuff coming out. If I turn the volume off, I got nothing. So at all times, we want to keep everything under control. Now, the second thing that I see a lot is confusing fingerings with notes. Okay, and I'll give you an example. Let's say I was going to play this chord, these three notes. Okay, and all I'm playing, to me, this is an A7 chord. I've got my pinky on the 9th fret of the 1st string. I've got my middle finger on the 8th fret of the 2nd string, and I've got my 3rd finger on the 9th fret of the 3rd string. But is that always the way I'm going to play it? No. I might play it like this. I play it either way. And so my point here is that what I'm thinking about are the notes that I'm playing. Okay, I know the shape, I know it's the 9th fret on the 1st string, I know that's a C sharp. You don't necessarily have to know the name of the note at all times, but it can be helpful. And I will grab the notes with whatever fingers will go there. It doesn't really matter. And the reality is that at first, when you learn something new, you're going to have to be fairly consistent about which fingers you use. But as you learn more and you start to play, like sometimes I would play this chord like this, sometimes I would play it with a bar, sometimes I might even play it here if I wanted to grab that note as well. Right? It depends on where I want to go from there. So I don't want you to try not to get too hung up on it. I could even bar with my middle finger. Like if I had to do something weird or wanted to do something weird, I suppose I could. So try your best to always be aware of what the notes are and don't worry about the fingers. Worry about what the notes are and try with many different fingerings to play the same chord so that when the time comes, you can play it however makes sense. Right? If I have a D and I'm used to that, but what if I want to do that so that I can grab up there? Or what if I want this so that I could grab the bottom part like that? Or what if I want this so that I could put a D underneath it or put the F sharp underneath it? All of these might come up just for a basic D chord. And how I finger it is going to depend on what I'm going to do with it from there. If all I'm going to do is strum it, sure, I might use the basic that I always do, but I might change it up just in case I change my mind. Which kind of leads me to the third point, and that is assuming that every guitar player's technique is going to be the same. Or assuming that just because your favorite guitar player does it that way, that's the best way to do it. This is the kind of thing that I think only a lot of experience can really demonstrate to you. And the only way I know to show this is something like alternate picking. When it comes to playing things that are very fast, like a major scale. If I want to play it very fast, you'll notice that I made a couple of mistakes that way because I used what's called strict alternate picking. That is actually not the most comfortable way for me to do that. What's the most comfortable way is what's commonly called sweep picking or economy picking. And so you'll notice that when I go from one string to the next, I just let my pick fall through. And I don't want you to get too focused on that. I have other videos that will explain those differences. But what's important is that when I was growing up and I was learning how to play guitar, I was taught in no uncertain terms that strict alternate picking was the only option. And I spent a very, very long time attempting to really get the hang of that. And I'll credit, there's a guitar player named Frank Gambale, who if you've never heard of or never seen, is a brilliant jazz and fusion guitar player. And he uses the style of picking that I eventually adopted. And I was exposed to it via a video, 30 something years ago. And it was like the light bulb went on and I went, oh, that's amazing. That's really, really cool. And it just went like that. Like I was able to go from having beaten my head against the wall for over a year trying to improve my strict alternate picking speed to poof, I could just play it. It just felt natural right off the bat. I say right off the bat, within a few weeks, as opposed to over a year of really working hard on that. So I say that because particularly, in the modern era, there are, a gajillion different people you can watch and you can emulate and you can examine their technique. And there are entire websites devoted to nothing but, different guitar player techniques. If you find a little something, a little anomaly that works for you, then use it. If it sounds good, if the sound that comes out of your guitar is the sound that you're looking for, and you don't find a disadvantage, there may be a small disadvantage at high speed. There's a small disadvantage for me at high speed with my my style of picking. Depending on what I'm playing, it can trip me up a little bit. Okay, again, it depends on exactly what I'm playing, and the speed is really high, so I don't care so much because I don't usually play that fast. So keep that in mind. Yes, there may be some trade-off. There are also trade-offs when it comes to strict alternate picking, by the way. There are trade-offs everywhere, okay? Again, depending on when you get to the extreme ends of stuff. So for now, as you're learning normal everyday stuff that you're going to play day in and day out, 99.9% of the time, if you find some little adjustment that works for you, then do it. It's probably the best thing for you. I say everybody has their own guitar DNA. You have certain built-in things that just sort of work better for you. So be sure to take advantage of those, okay? And that might be in the way that you hold your pick. Now, I am a big proponent of only using an index finger and a thumb on the pick, but I have certainly seen people do 2 fingers and play brilliantly. Eddie Van Halen among them. I've seen him do that. I've also seen him play with just that. I mean, there are a lot of different ways. Some people kind of do this hook thing. Some people grab the fingerboard or the pick guard. Some people don't. Some people float. There's so many different options, and you should try them all. And you should pick the one that works best for you, not the one that you are told should be the best thing. Now, the fourth thing that I want to talk to you about is a little bit of a sidestep, and there's really nothing I can show you to play here, but if you followed me for any amount of time, you know I'm a big stickler on rhythm, and I can't tell you how many times I have students come in and say, okay, well, I wanted to learn how to play this thing, so I thought I'd learn the notes first, and then I would apply the rhythms. First of all, that will never happen, okay? You will never apply the rhythms later. No one ever does. Second of all, if you do not apply rhythms first and right off the bat, your brain will apply them for you, and they will be incorrect. And not only will you have to apply them later, you will have to fix your incorrect placement. Everything has to sit somewhere in time. I can't take a pencil and just decide it's going to go right here and let go and it will stay there. Gravity will take effect, right? Gravity will pull it down. It will hit the ground. I can't just put a note out there somewhere. Time exists. You can't get away from it. And so if you try to just play a note and not give it some place in time and some time structure, your brain will do it. It's the way it'll work. So when you are learning something, 1 and 2 and 3, for example, a very simple lick, make sure that you've got some time. 3 and 4 and 1. You'll notice that in my videos, and I know it's a little bit unusual, most people who do these types of videos don't do this, but I count everything out. I play it slowly and I count it. If you always do what I do and say what I say, that's what I say all the time, you don't have to be able to read music. Okay, you don't have to understand all of this stuff. If you simply do what I do and say what I say as you watch my videos, you'll get the timing. It will start to assimilate, Okay, I'm not a strong music reader, never have been. But time is something that's always there. And if it's always at the forefront of your mind, you are always going to get it down. Okay, so I'll always keep that in mind. Now, the fifth thing is sort of a goal setting technique, for lack of a better word. And what I mean by this is it's very easy to say something like, okay, well, right now I'm going to focus on mastering the fretboard. And that's a goal that I see a lot, but it doesn't mean anything. And it doesn't have a tangible form. Okay, so this goes along with something that I often say, which is that people tend to overestimate what they can do in a week and underestimate what they can do in a year. So let's say that your goal is to, quote, master the fretboard. Okay, first of all, decide what you mean by that. Okay, does that mean that you want to be able to solo in any key, in any position on the fretboard? If so, that makes sense. Okay. Now, what you probably don't know is that there are a lot more keys and a lot more different scale choices, and there's a lot more to that than you realize. But that's okay, because as you move forward, you will realize that, and you will reestablish your timeline. Because 35 years ago, I came up with that whole master the fretboard idea. And it's 35 years later and I'm still working on it. So understand that that's a goal that's going to be way out there in the distance. Okay, so what I would encourage you to say is something along the lines of, I would like to be able to solo comfortably in any position on the fretboard over a 12-bar blues using the blues scale, the minor blues scale. Okay, that is something that is achievable. You know what that's going to look like. Okay, you know that you should be able to put on any jam track in any key and put yourself anywhere on the fretboard, and you should be able to play in that key. That's a goal that could be achieved maybe in a year or two. Okay, that's a reasonable goal. What are you going to do this week to work towards that goal? Okay, are you going to spend some time working with, say, my Blues Scale Trainer tool, right? Which will help you to get good at finding the patterns that you're in, starting at random places in the neck. Maybe you will work over jam tracks in the key of A this week, and you will make yourself play in a different fretboard position each time. So one day you only can play box 1, the next day you only can play box 2. You need to limit yourself when you do your jamming for stuff like that, okay? And this could go for any goals that you set. Okay, it's not just soloing. That just happens to be a really common one that comes up. But you could say, I want to be able to play 50 songs. Okay, well, great. Which songs? Make sure you come up with which songs. And when you say you're going to be able to play them, are you going to just strum and sing? Or are you going to play them along with a certain recording? Are you going to play the exact solo that's on the recording? Or is your goal to be able to solo over that song, doing it yourself, making up your own solo, right? A lot of people will say, I want to learn Red House, for example. And after a while, I finally figure out that what they really want is to be able to play Hendrix's solo along with the Hendrix recording of that song. Okay, and to me, that's very different than playing the song Red House. Because if I was to play the song Red House, it's a 12-bar blues in B flat. I would make it all up. I would just play a 12-bar blues in B flat. So I'm still playing Red House. I'm still singing the words to Red House. I'm still using, 12-bar blues in B flat. I'm still playing the same intro. I'm doing all that stuff, but the rest of the song wouldn't sound like any recording you've ever heard. So you have to be clear about what it is you're looking for. And speaking of that brings me to the next thing, which is that most people don't spend enough time doing what I call campfire songs. You have to be able to strum, right? Things like, right? Basic strumming type songs. Even if you want to play the blues and you want to be playing cool shuffles, that's great, but you still got to be able to strum. And you need to have that and be able to just play rhythm along, either you singing or somebody else is singing. Make sure that you know a good set of basic, what I would call campfire songs. Brown Eyed Girl, Margaritaville, that kind of stuff. Just standard, easy, strummable stuff. There's a lot of Beatles that falls into that category. A lot of people love the Beatles. You know, you can do things like USSR, right? Just playing basic, simple songs, but being able to strum them and strum them comfortably is a big deal. And when it comes to learning songs, this is the other thing, and this is number 7, this is the last one. You need to look for patterns that repeat. Things that you can use in the future. For example, when we learn a blues, right, we know that it's a 12-bar blues. So we have a pattern, a 1, a 4, a 5. We have a chord progression that comes up time and time and time again. Right? So we can get comfortable with that. If you're doing something like, you know, like I said, Brown Eyed Girl, you're doing something simple. Right? Be on the ball enough to notice that that's the 1 chord, that's the 4 chord, back to the 1 chord and the 5 chord. Okay, if you think of this in terms of how it works, right? You go up to the next, like I'm going from this string to that string. Okay, well, if you know from finding blues chords, that's 1 to 4. And then 5. So then you play another song that comes along and it's an A. And you realize, hey, wait a minute, that's 1 to 4 and 1 to 5 as well. Okay, I often make the joke that I have forgotten way more songs than most people will ever learn in their lives. And this is why. It's because every song that I learn, I know how the chords function. I pay attention. I don't just think A, D, A, E. I think 1, 4, 1, 5. Okay? By doing that, you would not believe how many songs are effectively the exact same song. And so you can remember hundreds of them by remembering 1 chord progression. All you have to do is remember, oh, this song is that chord progression. Oh, so is that song. Oh, so is that song. Then you know them all. And again, this gets back to just looking at music. Just as you learn a song, don't just learn the numbers. Don't just push buttons. Okay, that's not how you learn music. Now, when you're a beginner, this is way more than you can think about, right? When you're a beginner, you're focused on where to put your fingers and how to strum and what count is this, what beat is this. There's all these things that go into that. But as you get to that advancing beginner stage or that intermediate stage where you feel like you're not getting anywhere, paying attention to some of these details, setting good goals, paying attention to technique and what works for you, learning more songs and being able to just comfortably strum them. Just open a songbook. There are books out there that have, you know, hundreds of songs in them. I have another video of me doing that someplace else, and I was just opening the random page, put it on the stand, and just play it. Okay, you need to be able to do that. It needs to be comfortable to do that. Things like, you know, paying attention to which finger or different fingers, you know, all these things that I've mentioned in this video, all of those little details will make you a better musician, a more well-rounded guitar player in general, and should accelerate the pace at which you can learn things. This is the time, you know, these intermediate stages are so great because these are the times when you can make so much advancement. You can learn so many new things because you have a little bit of technique there, and the world is just really starting to open up musically. So if you pay attention to some of these details, and these are some of the things that a lot of people won't, but if you can make yourself pay attention to time, pay attention to how songs are put together, okay? In my All Access Pass, every single month, we sit down and we analyze a song. And it's amazing, you know, we've been doing this now for like 4 years, and we're starting to see, you know, repetitiveness. We're starting to see, hey, this is just like that other song we did from, you know, 2.5 years ago. Okay, that kind of stuff, that's important. That will help you improve, paying attention to things like that. So I hope you get something out of this video. If you are, like an advanced beginner or an intermediate guitar player, you've been feeling a little stuck, pay attention to these things. I think they will really, really help you. As always, I'm Griff Hamlin from Blues Guitar Unleashed. Thanks for joining me today, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.